He mentioned all of the doors, though he hesitated to write their names, which appeared to confuse him at the time. He didn't forget to talk about the people of Mecca as well, what they eat. For example, he pointed out that there were two main meals for the people of Mecca. What did they wear? What kind of clothes did they wear? Especially the cotton clothes that were imported through Jeddah port at the time. He praised their clothing habits and how they paid attention to the fine details. He talked about the buildings in Mecca al-Mukarramah. These buildings were often multi-story, but small in area. He also explained to us the reasons for the small areas of the houses, as the people of Mecca wanted to stay as close to the inviolable mosque as possible, which led to an increased demand of space, whether on the streets or the squares around the inviolable mosque in Mecca. You can see the crowding of the buildings. In addition, they wanted to make sure to establish a high city skyline rather than expanding horizontally on the ground. This is due to their desire to stick closely together, which led to the lack of building space being available in Mecca at the time, and the tendency to construct multi-story structures, although that wasn't a prevalent feature in most Islamic cities in that era. Al-Maqdisi also talked briefly about trading in Mecca and how goods flowed into it from everywhere. He also mentioned that its markets were full of different goods and products. Al-Maqdisi was the first traveler to visit Jeddah and write about it in 4th Hijri century. In the 5th Hijri century, about 100 years after, Nasser Khosrow Alawi showed up. Al-Maqdisi describes Jeddah in an amazing way in its first description. As he says, it has difficulties with water. Many of its inhabitants are Persian. It has a wondrous palace, and it was in good condition despite the hot climate. Nasser Khosrow is a scholar who lived in the 5th century Hijri, the 11th century AD. He traveled from his country as he worked in the Seljuk Empire and in the Ghaznavid state, but he quit. His pilgrimage trip was a funny story. He dreamt about a man who tried to stop him from going and guided him towards the south. So he considered this as a call to visit the Holy Lands. He quit his job in Merv and traveled with his brother and servant to the Arabian Peninsula. He made the pilgrimage to the inviolable house. Then he visited Egypt and different Iraqi regions. He returned and made pilgrimage again, then again for the 3rd time. After that, he returned to his country. Nasser Khosrow's trip was organized very well, as he wrote his diary on a daily basis. He wrote it as a witness, so his descriptions of the 2 holy cities and the routes that he passed on were very accurate. It is known that he originally wrote them in Persian. They were translated to Arabic later. That's why his descriptions are very accurate and precise, especially when it comes to the religious feelings and the holy places in the 2 holy cities. However, the role of Nasser Khosrow receives much attention due to the fact that he recorded the conflict between the Fatimid Caliphate and the Abbasid Caliphate. These 2 kingdoms were in a race to gain the loyalty of Mecca and Al-Madinah. to the benefit of their own kingdom. They would pay huge sums of money to the princes in Mecca to attain their loyalty. The people of Mecca knew how to benefit from this conflict. The one who pays more is praised in the sermons, and they prayed for him in the two holy mosques. Therefore, Nasser Khosrau described the destructive effects on Mecca because many of its inhabitants migrated from the city due to the circumstances that they were facing. He mentioned that the population of Mecca al-Mukarramah was no more than 2,000 people. Moreover, around 500 of them were considered strangers. This strange phenomenon makes us wonder about its reasons. Was the population originally low? Of course not, because the population of Jeddah in the same period was around 5,000 people. So was it possible that Jeddah, which was known as Mecca's gateway, had a higher population than Mecca itself? Or was it a crisis that the city went through at the time? He mentioned that Mecca faced a famine, and it reminds us of what was known as Mustansiriya distress, which happened in that time period. It was an extreme and severe drought that hit the Arabian Peninsula, Egypt, and many other Arabic countries. It led to the death of many people and the migration of a huge part of the population of the Arabian Peninsula. Some estimations suggest that tens of thousands of people migrated from the Arabian Peninsula to northern Africa in what was known as Beni Hilal migration, which happened during that time. Some data suggest that around 35,000 people migrated from Mecca alone. They left the city due to the drought and famine that it suffered during that time period. Before all of that, there was another important factor that must have had a crucial effect on Mecca al-Mukarramah, al-Hijaz in general, and on the whole Arabian Peninsula. It was the rise of the Karamatians who cut the road of pilgrimage, reached Mecca, seized control over the inviolable mosque, and stole the black stone. They killed many people in Hijaz, more than 30,000 people in one occasion. Nasser Khosrau, who visited Mecca al-Mukarramah in 444 Hijri, didn't provide any political or demographical information about Mecca al-Mukarramah. He only talked about the architectural and religious aspects. He arrived there in the beginning of Rajab in 444 Hijri. There was a season similar to that in Ramadan, as he described it. He described the location of Mecca and the inviolable mosque between the mountains. The closest mountain to the east of Al-Kaaba was Mount Abi Qubbais. As-Safa is located on this mountain's foot. There was many markets on the boundary of As-Safa and the northern part where Al-Marwa, a mountain that is lower than As-Safa, is located. There were markets in the city that were called the walking path between As-Safa and Al-Marwa, as they bridge them. Nasser Khosrau explained that people used to go through this market to move between As-Safa and Al-Marwa. In the end of the place, there were many shops, around 20, and there were barbers whose jobs were to shave the heads of those who had finished the minor pilgrimage. It happened during Nasser Khosrau's stay that the doors of Al-Kaaba were opened. He said that people could get into Al-Kaaba using stairs that accommodated 10 people. This place was called Beni Shaiba Crew. He talked about Al-Ka'ba's interior and how it is covered with marble. Sometimes it gets very crowded around it, and there wasn't extra room for a single other person. He estimated the number of people to be around 700 or 720. However, it wasn't until the 6th Hijri century that the great Moroccan travelers actually appeared. Ibn Jubayr al-Andalusi, one of the most famous Arab and Muslim travelers, if not the best of them all, arrived to the Holy Lands after a trip that started from Valencia, Spain, passing near islands in the Mediterranean and arriving in Alexandria, then all the way to Cairo, and the old Egyptian port referred to as Aydab. From there, he crossed to the other shore of the Red Sea, to Jeddah. He is Abu al-Hassan Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Jubayr al-Kanani. He was born in Valencia, one of Andalusia's cities, in 540 Hijri. He did 3 pilgrimage trips. The first lasted for about 4 years, starting from 578 Hijri to 581 Hijri,